From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened the Bolivarian armed forces and said they stand to lose if they continue supporting Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro. Trump gave a speech to Florida's International University with Venezuela as the main topic.
We seek a peaceful transition of power, but all options are open. We want to restore Venezuelan democracy, and we believe that the Venezuelan military and its leadership have a vital role to play in this process. If you choose this path, you have the opportunity to help forge a safe and prosperous future for all of the people of Venezuela. Or you can choose the second path, continuing to support Maduro.
President Trump also referred to the so-called humanitarian aid sent through a U.S. plane.
2 days ago, the first U.S. Air Force C-17, that's a big, beautiful plane, landed in Colombia, loaded with crucial assistance, including thousands of nutrition kits for little Venezuelan children. Unfortunately, dictator Maduro has blocked this life-saving aid.
Journalist Max Blumenthal, editor of The Gray Zone, joined us from our studio in Caracas to analyze Trump's speech. We asked him about Trump's anti-socialist words.
Well, Donald Trump's threats about socialism are actually for domestic consumption, and what Donald Trump's doing by constantly ranting against socialism is trying to link what he portrays as an economic crisis in Venezuela to those self-styled democratic socialists in the U.S. who are gaining prominence in the Democratic Party, like Bernie Sanders, who is likely going to run for president, as well as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's one of the most popular new faces on the Democratic political scene, and he'll proceed to call Elizabeth Warren a socialist if she wins the nomination. So these anti-socialist tirades are really for domestic consumption, and you can just tell if you're in Venezuela, in Caracas, that the problem isn't socialism. It's that 2/3 of the economy is dominated by capitalism and by private speculators who are driving the hyperinflation here and hoarding goods.
And President Nicolás Maduro has responded to Trump's speech, calling out his sudden concern for the Venezuelan people. Speaking at the Scientific Council in Caracas, Maduro said the U.S. is working to sabotage progress in the country.
Suddenly, Donald Trump woke up, and he woke up with a big love for Venezuela, and he wants to help Venezuela. When did he ever wanted to help somebody in his life? Can somebody understand? Can you really believe that he loves Venezuela? What does he love about Venezuela? The oil, the gold, diamonds, the gas. His eyes go round and big. The worst part is that people in Venezuela are puppeteers of his government that are serving the empire and take off their masks, and they call for invasion. He's trying to create a crisis for our country. He's looking for a way to provoke us and to threaten us militarily. You should be in charge of your own problems, mind your own business, be in charge of the 40 million poverty that live below the poverty line.
And Venezuela's foreign ministry has denounced once again the threats prompted by the United States. In a public statement, Venezuela has asked the international community to stop the interference attempts promoted by the Trump administration. The Bolivarian government says the U.S. is violating the United Nations Charter and international law. Meanwhile, demonstrations in support of President Nicolás Maduro and Venezuela continue to show. Residents in the state of Mérida gathered to reject the U.S. intervention attempts. Protesters say they will defend the peace and sovereignty of their country. The president of the National Constituent Assembly, Diosdado Cabello, joined the demonstration.
Why they attack Nicolás Maduro? Because he loves the motherland. They want a comfortable president. But I'm going to say to all the opposition that on May 20, this motherland came out. Who did they vote for? For Nicolás Maduro Moros, and our vote cares.
Hundreds of people in Argentina also gathered outside the U.S. Embassy in Buenos Aires to support the Bolivarian country. Social organizations said they gathered to reject imperialism and to support President Nicolás Maduro. Protesters denounced the U.S. attempts to interfere in Venezuela's domestic affairs.
High-ranking U.S. officials remind us every day with arrogance and audacity that when it comes to Venezuela, all options are on the table, including military. People will severely judge any new imperialist military intervention in the region and the complicity of those who irresponsibly go along with it.
And Cuba's President Miguel Díaz-Canel has shown his support to Venezuela on Twitter. Díaz-Canel denounced the attacks by the United States against the Latin American people and tweeted, "Hands off Venezuela." Support for Venezuela came all the way from Greece as well, where people at the Youth Communist Congress say they stand behind the country.
The KKE is the Communist Party of Greece with a Marxist-Leninist ideology. The 12th Congress of its youth has expressed its support for the government of President Nicolás Maduro in Venezuela.
We, the communists, we fight on behalf of the working class. We stand with the people for the people. And we will ensure that the capitalist dictatorship is not the final chapter. It's not the last stop. Socialism will prevail.
Delegates from 5 continents took part in this year's Congress.
This is not the end. Not only will this system fail, but new movements are emerging, and these alternative movements are winning the hearts of young people.
The KKE, despite being the 5th strongest in parliament, continues to mobilize people at a grassroots level more than any other party, and that's largely to do with its appeal to the young.
We are proud of the communist youth. We have faith in these young people. The youth presence will help strengthen the Communist Party. In the next elections, we hope to have a strong impact and outpouring.
And the youth were once again out in force as they filled the stadium. The most significant part of their activities is the unprecedented support for Venezuela. This is the 3rd event Venezuela's ambassador to Greece attended in recent weeks.
Only the people of Venezuela have the right to choose their own course, to determine their future. They do not have to ask for permission from any foreign government.
What is truly necessary is socialism. It's a reality that has to be spread throughout humanity.
A coalition of 16 U.S. states have sued President Donald Trump over his plans to use emergency powers to unlock funding for the construction of a border wall with Mexico. The lawsuit follows Trump's emergency declaration that allows him to spend billions of dollars more on border barriers than Congress had granted him. The lawsuit argues that Trump does not have the power to divert funds for building the wall because it is Congress that controls the spending.
President Trump got it right when he said he didn't have to do this.
And hundreds of people gather outside the White House to protest against the policies of President Trump. Demonstrators rejected the declaration of the national emergency to fund the larger border wall with Mexico. Protesters say the U.S. administration is promoting racism and discrimination.
We will fight at every turn for justice.
There is no emergency. Honestly, the only emergency that we're experiencing right now is the one that immigrant families are living throughout this country every day with raids, families that have been separated at the border, this wall that's going to just militarize our southern border and just create more harm than good.
That emergency, there's no emergency. It's a fake emergency. As a vet, I think it's uncalled for that he's calling people to the borders. There's no emergency at the border. The emergency is right over there at the White House with that man in office, with his bigotry, his racism, and his hatred towards people in this country.
We have more stories coming up. We'll be back.
An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives, Friday, only on Telesur. Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Relatives of the victims of a pipeline explosion in Mexico are waiting for the government to identify the remains of their loved ones a month after the disaster. On January 18, fuel thieves punctured the pipeline a few miles from one of Mexico's main refineries. Up to 800 people flocked the pipeline to fill plastic containers, but a couple of hours later it erupted in flames in a powerful explosion. The government is yet to return the remains of many victims, and many are still looking for their missing relatives.
We're still waiting. The government doesn't have any replies for us. They first told us we'd have to wait days. That's not reasonable. Maybe a month or two. But they told us a few days ago that they'll take another 4 months to identify bodies. So we don't see any clarity in that reply. We don't have anyone's support. Not the government, not anyone.
An irrigation canal has burst in northern Peru as heavy rains continue to flood the region. Market traders in the town of Aguas Verdes were trying to save what remained of the stalls after overnight floodings swept away most of it. At least 39 people have been killed and more than 8,000 have been affected by the latest series of mudslides and floodings across the country. The government has declared a state of emergency in the most affected areas.
All in all, there are 100 of us here, but there is another association of market traders next to us who are also in need. Look at how the channel is flooded. There are also fellow traders in a neighboring country who are also affected.
A massive fire at a landfill in Barbados is raising health worries among hundreds of residents. The fire has engulfed a section of the state-owned dump where old tires are discarded. Dangerous fumes have spread throughout the parish of St. Thomas. Efforts are continuing to extinguish the blaze, which is one of the largest in the country in recent years. A court in Argentina has ordered former Vice President Amado Boudou to return to prison after being released on bail last December. Boudou is serving a 6-year sentence over allegations of corruption while he was serving as an economy minister. His release was appealed by the current government's anti-corruption agency.
Now, what has to be done as soon as possible is to know, examine and dictate the final sentence.
A close aide of Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has been fired, suspected of improper campaign financing. Gustavo Bebiano was sacked after days of political tensions within the ruling PSL party.
His Excellency, the President of the Republic, Jair Messias Bolsonaro, has decided to dismiss, as of today, Gustavo Bebiano as Minister of the General Secretariat of the Presidency.
At least 200 people have gathered in Port-au-Prince to reject U.S. interference in Haiti. Demonstrators denounce what they say is an occupation by the United States in their country by burning a U.S. flag. They also ask for help from Russia and China to resolve the crisis that has paralyzed the island. A wave of protests was triggered by inflation and corruption and to demand the resignation of President Jovenel Moïse. Relatives and friends of the political prisoners arrested in Honduras in 2017 have held a protest. Several human rights organizations are demanding their release after the post-election protests. According to activists, the allegations presented by the prosecution do not comply with the law.
We think they are excessively extreme measures, like a way to intimidate other people. To not go to demonstration against them in particular. I think the measures are to punish them for having participated in actions like this. For many international organizations, the partners are political prisoners. We have political prisoners in Honduras.
The constitutional reform in Cuba, approved by the National Assembly, has been debated for 3 months in communities and workshops. Let's look at the details.
In this research center for livestock improvement, the island's constitutional reform is being debated.
This is very important because we're making out the path we must go take. And in this particular case, we're looking forward to contributing to our country's development.
Scientists leave the laboratories for a few minutes to join the debate with their colleagues. Several topics are being discussed. One of them is same-sex marriage.
God created man and woman so they can procreate, and I think that was no mistake. That's why I think that it would be a big mistake to approve same-sex marriage. We won't be able to go back.
For others, same-sex marriage follows the humanist goal of the Cuban Revolution.
I don't think that we should do what the rest of the world does. This is about a constitution, and we are going to be able to hear what every citizen has to say. As each citizen will have the opportunity to vote for the constitution. We are defending a human right. It's not only from a historic or religious point of view, about giving citizens the opportunity to understand other citizens.
Participants of the referendum's first round agreed that the debate is a democratic expression of their country.
For us, being part of the constitutional reform debate alone is already important. The other important thing is to apply what our constitution says.
The first constitutional reform debate was done last August on Fidel Castro's 92nd birthday. For many, the Magna Carta that includes their political thinking is also a homage to the leader of the Cuban Revolution.
We're taking one last break. Stay with us.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. India's most senior military official in the region of Kashmir has claimed that Pakistan's intelligence agency played a role in last week's deadly attack on a security convoy. The military official told journalists that the leader behind the attack, or the leaders, were being tracked and that the attack was planned on the Pakistani side of the border.
Complete attack on the convoy was masterminded by Pakistan and the ISI and the JEM from across the border. What happened from the local content is a matter of investigation. So we have the leads, we are working on them.
However, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has called the accusations baseless and said his country is ready to cooperate with investigations. Khan also said the tensions can only be eased through dialogue, but said his country will retaliate if attacked by India.
Today, I make this offer to the Indian government. Whatever investigations you want to carry out in this connection, to find out if there was any Pakistan involvement in it, we are ready to help. If you have any actionable intelligence of Pakistan involvement, give it to us. I guarantee that we'll take action. Not because there's any pressure on us, but because if anyone is using Pakistan soil for such activities, they are harming Pakistan. It is enmity with Pakistan. It is against our interests.
Israeli security forces have arrested at least 5 Palestinians for what they say is causing a disturbance at the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. The men were taking part in a prayer protest outside a section of the hilltop compound of the mosque. This after reports emerged that Israeli security forces had entered the area overnight and put new locks and chains on the gates of the premises. The founder of Chinese technology giant Huawei said the arrest of his daughter and company CFO was politically motivated and seeks to crush the company. She was arrested by Canada at the request of the U.S., who charged her with bank and wire fraud to violate sanctions on Iran.
There's no way the US can crush us. The world needs Huawei because we are more advanced. Even if they persuade more countries not to use us temporarily, we could just scale things down a bit. And because the US keeps targeting us and finding fault with us, it has forced us to improve our products and services. If the lights go out in the West, the East will still shine. And if the North goes dark, then there is still the South. America doesn't represent the world. America only represents a portion of the world.
Bishops from around the world are meeting in Vatican City to discuss revelations of sexual abuse in the church. More than 200 religious leaders are attending the summit, and heads of bishop conferences will attend sessions with the Pope, abuse experts and victims. The church has come under fire for its handling of the crisis as accusations continue to appear. Prominent figures from the church say the meeting will establish protocols to deal with these cases.
I think the Pope wants this meeting, and this meeting happening is already a very important point. But then he's saying we're not going to solve all the problems in 3 days. So if people are expecting that, that is a real, almost irrational expectation. But then if you're expecting that there will be follow-up, that is a reasonable expectation.
And critics say the Pope has mishandled the crisis and not done enough to make bishops accountable for covering the abuses. Victims are calling for the immediate dismissal of priests who abused children and for bishops who covered up the crimes as well.
Well, the very minimum that the church can do is to dismiss from the clerical state any priest that has abused a child, any priest that has committed such a crime, and the dismissal also of any bishop or cardinal who has covered up, because cover-ups are just as bad, if not worse in some ways, than the actual crimes. And the church has led the world in covering up these vile crimes for many generations, and it has to stop, and it has to stop now.
Thousands in Sri Lanka have taken to the streets of the capital, Colombo, to watch the annual Buddhist festival. The decades-old ceremony is categorized by a parade of drummers, traditional dancers, and torchbearers escorting dozens of decorated elephants over 3 kilometers. The highlight of the festival is a casket carried by an elephant, which Buddhists believe contains a relic of Buddha. And the Lantern Festival is in full swing all across Asia. In China's Xiqiao town, fire sparks bursted out, lighting fire dragons, dancers, and even the crowd. The dragon dance attracted passersby who became part of the celebration. Folk art performances have taken place in various provinces across China. The Lantern Festival is celebrated on the 15th day of the first lunar month to mark the end of the Chinese New Year celebrations. That brings us to the end of this news brief, but as you know, you can find these and many other stories from our website at telesurenglish.net. And we're on social media as well, so follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.